Hey everyone, it's Jake with No Till Kings. We're here at our facility, and today we're going to be talking about deleafing and canopy management. So right here, I'm using our apogee meter to check the light intensity in the canopy. And what we can see is when we're at, close to the top of the canopy and we're not shaded, we're going to be at around, 350 to 400, over up to 450 or so, 460 here. But as I go lower or even at the same height and I'm under a leaf, we're down to 100, under 100. And what that means is that we really need to go through and deleaf that canopy to help improve the light intensity throughout the lower sections of that canopy. So when we flip a room to flower and we're assessing the canopy, we look through and say, hey, how much of this leaf do we need to go through and pull off or strip out or cut off of the plant to improve airflow, improve sunlight, and get rid of maybe a lot of different branch sites that would end up not being viable buds or not being good producing branches on the plant. And so we have to go through and assess, what do we want to cut out? How much do we want to cut out? And what does that look like as the flower cycle continues down and the room gets further along in flower? So when we're going to go through and take off either branches or node sites or just leaf material, we have to selectively do that so that we really, are aware of what we're cutting out. And so if I go through on a branch like this and I'm looking at it and I say, hey, maybe this branch, some of these sites could grow up okay, but some of these lower branches, these little branches down here are not going to do great. I may go through and cut those off. And we'll throw those in our bucket and we'll continue pruning. And some of this lower leaf, I may pull it off by hand and put it in there. Same thing over here. I'm going through and I'm just pulling this leaf off, just like that. And we'll make our way up a branch. We'll cut some of these other small branches that are side branching off, and then we'll decide to stop at a certain point. Now I'm right here. This is where we have to make a decision. I could either cut this branch off and leave these top 3 nodes, or I could leave it on. For us right now, I'll probably go ahead and leave it on, but it may be something that we decide to cut off in the next week or so as we come back through this room. And I'll make my way around this plant. We'll continue on to the plants next to it, and we'll go down the entire room. And this plant right here is a good example of a small lower branch where I may take off that entire lower branch. It's just a really small branch. It looks like it's not going to get enough light. And by taking this off, we're going to allow the plant to put a lot more of that energy and resource to the other branches and the other node sites that are further up, closer to the light. And so same thing here. We'll go through and we'll cut these off just like that. And we'll end up with a bucket full of some leaf that we will go through, we'll weigh it, we'll get the waste, and then we will end up cutting it up and mulching it and composting it back onto our soil. So the soil, the worms, all the microorganisms in the soil will break down that leaf matter, and that turns into more rich organic waste. In a room like this, in week 3, midweek 3, we're gonna continue to deleaf throughout the flowering cycle in this room to help open up the canopy, to increase the light exposure down into that canopy. And we can also raise and or lower the lights in this room to help increase the light intensity across that entire canopy. This here is mimosa, and in this room, we're a little bit through week 3 of flower. And this is a good example of how when we deleaf that canopy early on in flower, it moves through that flowering time by opening up the canopy a little bit. So here we've taken off a lot of those lower branches, a lot of the lower bud sites that were not going to thrive. We've tried to get rid of a lot of that lower and middle leaf to open up that canopy. And as you can see, there's still a lot of leaves. There's still a lot of, available sites for that plant to intake the light and to help grow. But we're able to open it up a lot and to allow more light down into that canopy. One thing we're going to be trying soon is the under canopy lights. Shout out to Faven too for letting us try those out. We're really excited about it. And that's going to be something that we're going to be checking out really soon. So up here at the top of the canopy, we're gonna be at, between 875 to 1,000 ppfd, depending on where we're at and where the top colas are. And as we go down underneath that canopy, that light intensity is gonna drop. And that's why deleafing is so important, to help open up as much of that plant as possible to as much light as possible. So this room here is a little further along. We're a few weeks away from harvest, and we're gonna be able to show you how when we open up that canopy and deleaf earlier on in flower, how that translates further along down the line, how those bud sites develop, how the plant really starts to thrive further along in flower. So we've got different strains here. We have the J1 and our lemon banana sherb and our blue dream behind me. And now every strain gets deleafed a little bit differently, because the canopies end up growing a little bit different throughout the flowering cycle. The blue dream right here takes a lot of deleafing. It has quite a broad leaf structure, and if we don't go through and deleaf it, a lot of those lower buds are gonna end up being very small. They're not gonna end up developing how they should. Thank you all so much for watching this video on deleafing and canopy management. We're the No-Till Kings. Please like and subscribe. We have a lot of other great videos on tips and tricks in the garden. And stay tuned for more. We're always coming out with new stuff. We'll see you on the next one.